want to start with is the fact that we all imagine that Maxar is going through a huge transformation for a couple of, probably 1 year or two. So what's your story? What's your vision of this transformation?
If you look at it, this last couple of years have been challenged because of the fact that launching new 30-centimeter satellites is challenging sometimes. But really reorienting the organization in regards to the new capacity we're bringing on board and what can that do from a foundational mapping perspective. But the big transformation that we've been working for is the dynamics around how you drive more predictive, more automation, more monitoring to help drive change that's going on when you talk about the mapping in foundational or even tactical. This is what's really driving Maxar's change, and it's actually being driven purely by our customers and our customers' requests of how they can do things faster and more agile.
What's the kind of demand which is actually motivating you to invest more into the constellations?
Well, I think having the foundation of 30 centimeter that we have, we can cover a major swath of the world. But the customers, what they're really driving us to is that demand around change. And so it's not just about what we're doing, it's also what our partners are doing. So for the first time, if you've seen some of the press, we've actually engaged in sourcing other data from our what we call our virtual constellation, because the fact that we're looking for things like change monitoring. Being able to revisit or see things over and over and over again, critically important. Why we're using virtual constellation. We have a lot of people doing maritime awareness, not just for military purposes, but also for civilian purposes, fishing and other things. And so having other constellations that can support it, it could be in, with our SAR capabilities, it could be with our smaller sat capabilities, tip and Q, it allows us to get that capacity to even drive it more so we can actually drive more automation and more change detection.
I think when I look at your website, you talk about Maxar Intelligence. What's the story about that?
Well, it's really interesting. We've been delivering very highly algorithmic insights programs for a very long time with a lot of credibility. But a lot of those, of course, are in classified environments and so forth. What we've been able to take is some of those capabilities and deliver them in more routine capabilities. Customers or other nations who are looking for object detection, the modeling around it. If you're trying to understand all the vessels or all the movement on the ground, you need to be able to, one, have all the models of all those objects, and then a library and an archive to do it. Then you have to be able to come over across imagery, take it, understand what's changed, what's movement, and so forth. So we've actually had these capabilities. We're bringing to market at an accelerated rate right now. We've actually invested in a couple partner relationships to even accelerate some of these capabilities. So it is a place that we're seeing a massive demand and massive growth.
There must be a lot of software focus too in your company for that, because you need so much of computing and software capability to make that happen.
Correct. Well, we've been investing in something called, a lot of people know it as MGP, or Maxar's Global Geospatial Platform. And what we're doing with it now is it's becoming an architected platform for how you can actually, retrieve information, but more importantly, task. So by having this foundation, you can actually layer on these services on top to be able to give you the insights based on, one, having the history in the archive, second, understanding what the change request is, third, having the algorithms underneath it. But you want one place to go and design and architect that as a customer. And so we're evolving that platform, not just from what we deliver for our enterprise and commercial customers today, but we're actually building that as an appliance into our international customers who want to look like smaller U.S. governments. And of course, those are our allies and partners that we do through the U.S. And that, by giving them that scale and capability, you're basically giving them the same tools, algorithms, models, and everything in their own environments.
We also see a lot of focus of Maxar going on to digital twin elevation model of the world. We would like to throw some light about what's that product all about.
3D used to be a topic that was up here at the government, right? They're the ones who did the 3D mapping in elevation or government countries. We're now seeing that push down into more consumer applications. And it's really important that you have that exquisite information to be able to show all of those elements, and of course elevation is a critical one.
Looking at the base map of the United States, which we build probably every 3 years or 4 years, how do you think that Earth observation constellation and virtual constellation which you have as a service could actually strengthen and provide them a lot of opportunities to update it kind of on a monthly basis or a fortnightly basis?
Yeah. If you think about it, we've gone from just being a SunSync company We now have 2 satellites going mid-inclination. We're about to add 2 more. We can actually cover the foundational map from different angles and different views and multiple times a day. That allows for greater refresh. And I think that that's one of the most important things we're doing is constant refresh. But it's also being able to drive the change, and what we call the site monitoring change or task-based changing, which is to understand where in your map you need to change versus having to go refresh everything. I think you and I talked about once that, going in and looking at, hey, maybe 2002 is good. But maybe you need to modernize that change now based on some kind of dynamic that you have to do, and so you can do a task-based change. Well, you can't do that if you're limited on your coverage. Yep. Now, when you have this, the large state-based coverage that we have in 30 centimeter, you can actually task it that way.
What do you think about the business potential for Maxar into the civil government? What are your key priorities in that direction?
When you think about what imagery can do across multiple things, and I'm just using this first responder work that we're doing, opening up that data, by the way, that's an open data right now. If anybody wants to go see it, that is something that Maxar is not charging for. We want to make sure that people can have it, first responders can get their CAL FIRE, can get what they need. Understanding directional in one image, and we're hitting them 4 or 5 times a day, you can actually see smoke direction, you can actually see fire progress, you can see things to do around predictability and safety. That's really important. Civil is also about population growth, right? Looking human landscape, understanding for those who've ever seen, what it looks like from west of the Mississippi versus east of the Mississippi, you understand that the United States is a very different country. But mapping all that and making sure that you have that can help for everything from a census perspective. Other things that we have done and we're very passionate about, unfortunately, on the civil perspective, is humanitarian rights in war-torn areas. And I think that there's lots of these different things. The hurricane relief we did for safe passage and food passage, those are more on the humanitarian emergency side of the business, but you can actually see the applicability and scale from a civilian perspective. Commercial applications are huge. Everything from petrochemical, where you're monitoring and managing the safety and infrastructure of a petrochemical company and their supply chain, all the way through, of course, what we do from a commercial mapping perspective, the enterprise mapping perspective. The applications are growing astronomically, and consumer demand on it is growing astronomically right now. I think the consumer experience wants to understand going from a flat world to a 3D world. And I think so we're seeing more and more of these applications and pressure putting on us.
What's your approach for the collaboration with the bigger ecosystem of the geospatial industry?
First off, I think that the geospatial is a ecosystem.
Yeah.
I think we have to be dependent. There's not one that is not dependent on the other. It's really important that we actually are working for the survivability to make sure that we're actually driving a very strong industry to solve these problems that we're facing today. That's one. The second thing, I think Maxar, growing through the roots of what we've done from a from a foundational mapping perspective, it's been great. And I think that what we're learning here at our company is the ecosystem is a force multiplier scale, but if we work better together, there's a lot more we can solve.
So what's the new business model at Maxar?
The business model is, if you really think about it, it's data collection to data production. And what I mean by data production, I'm talking about putting it in a context that can change things faster. But it's also about making things more effective and efficient for things in safety and safety. If you are in the mapping business and you are producing imagery that a car is going to drive on, it is critically important that information is modified, enhanced, and developed at a pace. So it's not just about the data, it's about the ability to, to manage the data in a way that can force change faster for faster decision making. So we can actually keep up with this rapid changing world. And with AI, and I've seen some of the AI models, we have to adapt to it and actually also address to it because of the fact that it can actually develop faster than this, but our capabilities can only come so fast as well.
So it's not about just pixel, it's about actionable outcome.
Absolutely. 100%.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.